The internal assessment, or IA, is a compulsory part of the course for every geography student. It's an essential part of the course because it actually makes up a percentage of your final grade. For standard level students, that will be 25%, and for high level students, that will be 20%. There is a total of 25 marks available for your IA. Your IA should be no more than 2,500 words. However, some bits of your IA, like labels, footnotes, and tables, are not included in the word count. If you're struggling with your word count because you have too many words, I recommend that you go check out what's not included so that you have the option to take out words without actually taking out content. The IA should be based on primary data. That means data that you will have directly collected yourself. For example, in my class, our IA was on option G, urban environments, so we went to collect data in East Berlin. The data that you collect for your IA can be completely individual, or it can also be done in groups or as a class. For example, some aspects of our IA were evaluated independently from one another because they were based on individual perception. Some other aspects of our IA were more factual, so we could evaluate those as a group. In that case, you can all have the same data, or you can all choose to share data between your class. The IA tends to be based on one of the options that you will have studied in class, because all of the core units and most of the high-level units are excluded by the IB and are not allowed to be used for an IA. Since you need to conduct fieldwork for your IA, the exact topic will depend on what is available for you to investigate on. That could be based on your local environment, or it could be based on your school's ability to travel to collect data. In my case, we were very lucky to be able to travel to East Berlin to collect data, but that might not be the case for everyone. For instance, I know that geography students in the grade below me in my school were supposed to travel to Barcelona to collect data for an IA on option E, but they were unable to do that due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, I think they're doing their IA on option A because we live by the Garonne, which is a large river in the southwest of France, and so that is an easier field trip to carry out in the current circumstances. Every year, an examiner's report is released based on what students did well and what students did poorly on in the IA. You can use this advice to modify your own IA in order to maximize your chances of getting a high grade. It's possible that using the examiner's report is already integrated in your teacher's strategy. If not, you could suggest it to them or even just go look it up for yourself. The examiner's report can be very useful, especially the part which describes what students last year did poorly on, because it allows you to see what mistakes they made so that you can avoid making the same mistakes. For your IA, you will need a general question and one or multiple hypotheses. You can find guidance on IB websites and books, but it is ultimately up to you and your teacher to choose a reasonable question to base your investigation on. In my class, all our IAs were based on the same question. We collected the same type of data and we went in the same place, etc. However, they're not exactly the same IAs. As I mentioned before, some of the data that we collected is based on individual perception, so that will vary from person to person. We also had different hypotheses, and we collected data in 6 different places but only used 4 in our IAs. That means that which places were used in an IA was completely dependent on each person. Even if all of your class has the same question and you choose to investigate all in the same place, it is important that the written report is completely yours and yours only. You're not allowed to write an IA with another person or in a group. Generally speaking, an IA should be made up of 8 parts. First, you should have a title page and a contents page. Then, you should have an introduction. Your introduction should present the fieldwork question and any additional relevant information for the context of your investigation. You should then have a methodology. This will present how you will investigate and collect data. Then, data presentation. You need to make sure that your data is presented in a clear and appropriate way to facilitate understanding. Then you should have a data analysis section. This is probably going to be the biggest section of your IA, and I would recommend that you join it with the data presentation section. In this section, you should demonstrate your knowledge and understanding of your investigation by interpreting and explaining your data, recognizing any trends, and spotting any potential anomalies. You should also be answering your question and focusing on all the different parts. For example, my question was, to what extent has urban renewal led to gentrification in different areas of East Berlin? In this question, we have 3 parts that we need to answer. The first part is, has there been any urban renewal? The second part would be, has there been any gentrification? And the third part should be, In which cases has gentrification happened because of urban renewal? You should then have a conclusion. This is where you will summarize the findings of your investigation. A conclusion should be concise and clear, and you should revisit your hypotheses and your question. Then you will have an evaluation to review the methods of your investigation. You should comment on the factors that may affect the quality of your investigation by stating both the weaknesses and the strengths. This is also where you should suggest some improvements for your investigation. Finally, we have your references. It is important that you cite your sources throughout your IA and that you reference them properly at the end. To help you write your IA and know what the examiners are looking for, I recommend that you look at the IA criteria. The IA is marked following 6 different criteria. To help you with that, I have attached to this page a PDF document with all 6 IA criteria and all the necessary details, so feel free to download that and print it off if you need. So that's all for the IA. I've left this very general, some general explanations and general advice so it can be applied to any IA. However, if you do have more questions or if you need more tips for your particular IA, I would recommend that you ask your teacher because they can tailor their advice to your specific needs.